The finale of Better Call Saul was praised by critics as masterful, as the Breaking Bad spin-off drew to a close after 6 seasons. But even after the finale, there were still unanswered Breaking Bad questions. Let's talk them through. And it didn't go unnoticed that there were many characters that weren't around in the original series, Breaking Bad, who are original to the show, and they're some of the best. We're sharing the top 10. The prequel to Breaking Bad focuses on the development of Bob Odenkirk's character, Jimmy McGill. It shows him transforming into the vain criminal defense lawyer Saul Goodman. But it's Saul over, and fans are still debating the finale in forums, on social media sites, and in bars across the country. Variety's Daniel D'Addario called it a stunning and elegant finale to one of television's most consistently strong dramas of the past decade. The Telegraph's Ed Power found the spin-off's finale to be slower and sadder, but just as momentous as that of its predecessor. Better or worse than the conclusion of Breaking Bad? Opinions will differ, but Saul's departure feels every bit as painstaking as that of its sibling thriller. As Better Call Saul has seemingly closed the door on the Breaking Bad universe, there are still some lingering questions that remain unanswered. The Breaking Bad prequel showed how James McGill came to adopt his Saul Goodman alter ego, and depicted how he and Mike Ehrmantraut came to work with each other. It was also a story of Mike's transformation from a grieving father to the right-hand man of Gustavo Fring, the drug kingpin. The ending of Better Call Saul was both fitting and melancholy, but there are still some unanswered questions about key figures in the Breaking Bad universe. Keep watching as we look at everything that's left open for interpretation at the end of Better Call Saul. Firstly, what happened in Santiago? The biggest lingering question is the mysterious event in Santiago, Chile, the details of which remain sketchy, that played such a big part in Gus Fring's legend with the cartel. The fate of Gus Fring is referenced only in hushed tones over the course of both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Characters aware of what happened to Gus in Santiago include Lalo, Don Eladio, and Peter Schuler, all of whom are tied to Gus's criminal empire. Though his exact activities in Chile are unknown, it is clear that whatever did happen built upon his reputation when he fled to Mexico, as well as aiding him in building a legitimate business empire with Madrigal. Speculation abounds about Gus's involvement with the government of Chilean dictator General Augusto Pinochet. Although there is no record of Gus in Chile, he left his home country in 1986, the same year that Pinochet survived a failed assassination attempt. The mystery over what happened in Santiago is a fertile plot point for a future Breaking Bad spin-off focused on Gus Fring's early life in Chile. Perhaps Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould held off from revealing what happened there because they wanted their options open for a return to the Breaking Bad universe at some point in the future. Next up, when did Gus and Mike finish building the Super Lab? At the end of Better Call Saul, Gus Fring's Super Lab remains unfinished. It was revealed in the final season of Better Call Saul that the Super Lab, where Walter White and Jesse Pinkman will later work, is the final resting place of both Lalo Salamanca and Howard Hamlin. With the threat of Lalo eliminated, Gus orders Mike to find a new team to complete work on Gus's meth Super Lab. In Breaking Bad Season 4, Episode 1, a flashback shows Gail Boetticher analyzing a sample of Walt's blue meth and unwrapping equipment in his brand new Super Lab. This places the completion of construction at some point before March 2008, when Breaking Bad Season 1 takes place, a time frame considerably longer than the original 10 months suggested in Better Call Saul Season 4. Perhaps construction took place in small bursts so as not to arouse suspicion. Yet another question unanswered: did Saul and Gus ever interact in Better Call Saul? Gus knows about Jimmy McGill, aka Saul Goodman, but it's less clear whether Jimmy knows about Gus. While Jimmy sends Kim to kill Gus, this also serves as a way to get her out of the apartment and away from Lalo. It also provides structural support. While Kim and Gus don't meet in person, they have a phone conversation. In Breaking Bad, Saul Goodman gives Walter the impression that he's never met or interacted with Mike's mysterious employer. This is illustrated in a scene where Mike disparages Walter as small potatoes, not worthy of being noticed by my guy. He has clearly protected Gus's anonymity, which is understandable given Fring's elevated position in Albuquerque's society. It's a good bet that Saul and Gus never knowingly crossed paths on Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad. Why and how did Jimmy start working with Kuby? Better Call Saul introduced viewers to a member of Saul Goodman's A-Team, Huel Babineau, in Season 3, Episode 5, Chicanery. It's believed that Bill Burr was supposed to return as Patrick Kuby in Better Call Saul Season 5, but he had to drop out due to a bereavement, so Kuby was replaced by by Stephen Ogg Sobchak. Therefore, it's likely that Kubi made his way into Jimmy's Black Book, which was acquired in the final season, and you can bet some scheme or scam for one of his criminal clients required Jimmy to call on the character's services. Next up, what happened to Lyle? Lyle has been Gus Fring's most loyal employee. He never questions his decisions, unlike Mike, and doesn't end up dead at Gus's hand like Victor. Audiences last see Lyle covering for Gus while he recovers from a gunshot wound in Season 6. It's likely that Lyle loses his livelihood when the actions of Walter White cause the destruction of Los Pollos Hermanos and its parent company Madrigal. We'd love to hear your thoughts on these unanswered questions too. After Better Call Saul ended on August 15th of 2022, viewers debated if it could surpass its predecessor Breaking Bad. While the two shows share very high highs in the story, it's also interesting to compare their casts. The Better Call Saul cast is full of familiar faces like Gus Fring, Mike Ehrmantraut, and the titular Saul Goodman, but some of its most memorable characters were never part of Breaking Bad at all. We have chosen the top 10 characters from this entire list. Number 1. Cliff. Cliff Main is one of the more moral characters in Breaking Bad, but he also perfectly fits the stereotype of an older lawyer who had a nice firm. He was a no-nonsense kind of guy, and unfortunately he became a pawn in Kim and Saul's most heinous plan, the character assassination of Howard Hamlin. Number 2. Mrs. Nguyen. The nail salon where Jimmy McGill first set up his independent law practice was owned by Mrs. Nguyen. She was generally very hard on Jimmy and his antics, but her insults were so exaggerated that they were often funny. Sadly, they didn't go out on a kind note. Number 3. Werner. Werner was a German man hired by Gus Fring and Mike to create the meth superlab that Walter and Jesse used for their operation. Werner's relationship with Mike was the stuff of legend, cementing the former police officer as one of the best deuteragonists in television. Number 4. Stacy. Stacy is Mike's daughter-in-law, and she's the mother of Kaylee Ehrmantraut. She's one of the key people that Mike entered his partnership with Gustavo Fring because of. Better Call Saul fans know that Stacy is essential to the early seasons of the show. She's also integral to the Mike-centered episode that many view as one of the best. While Stacy always did her best to keep Mike on the straight and narrow, his love for her and Kaylee proved to be his undoing. Number 5. Schweikert. Richard Schweikert, Kim's former boss, was the original defendant in Jimmy's class action lawsuit against the retirement home. Throughout much of the middle of the series, he was instrumental in helping Kim with Mesa Verde. Schweikert was one of the most skilled lawyers in the series, and like many of the other lawyers, he was constantly at odds with Jimmy. Number 6. Chuck. Chuck McGill is Jimmy McGill's older brother and one of the main inspirations for Jimmy to become a lawyer in the first place. His electromagnetic hypersensitivity was one of the key conflicts in the early era of Better Call Saul. Number 7. Lalo. Lalo Salamanca is arguably one of the best villains in Breaking Bad, and he lasted far longer than anyone could have predicted. Ultimately, he became the main antagonist of Better Call Saul's second season. Number 8. Howard. At the beginning of Better Call Saul, Howard Hamlin was meant to be seen as the show's primary antagonist, but there turned out to be far more to him than audiences initially perceived. Number 9. Nacho. Ignacio Nacho Varga is a cartel ally who ended up being a critical part of the entire Breaking Bad universe after his dealings with Hector Salamanca. Not only was the paralysis of Hector Salamanca his doing, but he ended up nearly completely undoing the Salamanca family in the Season 5 finale. Number 10. Kim. Attorney Kim Wexler shared the role of the protagonist with Mike Ehrmantraut for most of Better Call Saul. However, it can be said that by the end of the series, she was solidly the second most important character. Kim was not only one of the hardest working characters in the series, but also the only character as skilled as Jimmy at conning people. What an awesome cast! Let us know your favorite character. Thanks for watching.